One afternoon, a woman slid the rings off her fingers, set them in a small dish by the sink, and never put them back on. She wasn't grieving, she wasn't broke, nothing was wrong. But within a year, the women in her circle had quietly rewritten who she was. "She's let herself go," one of them said at lunch, another nodded, and not one of them understood that they had it exactly backward. She hadn't let go of herself. For the first time in 50 years, she had finally taken hold of herself. This is the story of what she understood, and what most people spend a lifetime missing. We are taught, almost from the cradle, that a woman proves her worth with what she wears. Rings say she is loved, a necklace says she is refined, earrings say she is feminine, and a bare face says she has given up. So here is a question that turns all of that on its head. Why is it that some of the most powerful women you will ever meet wear almost nothing at all? Not the poor ones, not the careless ones. Women of real presence who could wear anything and choose to wear nothing. True presence doesn't require a signature. It is a quiet light that comes from within. It is the weight of a life fully lived. Because one day you realize that the most beautiful thing you can carry is simply your own name. Your presence is enough. It always was. Thank you for listening. Today, 4 truths about women who stop wearing jewelry after 60. Not fashion advice. Something deeper. What the research quietly reveals. What a lifetime finally teaches. And one idea underneath all 4 that may change how you see every woman you have ever admired, including the one in your mirror. Coco Chanel, who built an empire on adornment, said something startling near the end of her life. Elegance is refusal. Hold on to that. Let's begin. Truth number 1. She has stopped proving herself because she finally knows who she is. Think for a moment about who wears the most. The loudest labels, the heaviest sparkle, the most anxious polish. It is almost never the woman most certain of herself, and there is science underneath that instinct. In 2019, researchers Martin, Scheller, and Pandelaire published a study in the Journal of Research and Personality asking a simple question: why do people grow less materialistic as they age? Their answer was quietly profound. It was not about money, and not even about self-esteem. It was about something they called self-uncertainty. When you are young and unsure of who you are, you reach for objects to build a self you can point to and say, "See, this is me." But as that uncertainty softens with the years, the need for props softens with it. Drawing on a large lifespan study, they found materialism declines steadily, decade after decade, all the way to about the age of 60. Consider a woman named Margaret. For 40 years, she never left the house without her jewelry, the way another person never leaves without their keys. Then somewhere in her late 60s, it simply stopped mattering. She said later, "I used to get dressed for the room, now I get dressed for myself, and it turns out I need a lot less than I thought." She hadn't lost interest in herself. She had finally stopped asking the world one exhausting question: am I enough yet? So the next time you see a woman who has quietly set the jewelry aside, resist the old assumption. She may not be subtracting from herself at all. She may be announcing, without a single word, that she no longer needs the world to confirm what she already knows. Marcus Aurelius wrote it nearly 2,000 years ago. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. She simply figured that out a little early. Truth number 2. She has learned that comfort is not laziness, it is wisdom. Let's be honest about something no poem ever mentions. After a certain age, jewelry can simply hurt. Earrings drag at ears that have carried them for 50 years. A necklace sits like a hand at the throat. Rings press on knuckles that ache when the weather turns. And skin that once tolerated anything now, quietly, says no. For generations, women were taught to endure all of it in silence, because that is what a lady does. There was a woman named Ruth, 71, who wore the same pair of gold earrings to church every Sunday for decades, even as they left her ears sore for days. When her granddaughter finally asked why, Ruth paused and realized she had no answer, only a habit and an old fear of being seen as unkempt. The following Sunday, she went without them. She told her granddaughter afterward, "I kept waiting for someone to notice. No one did. The only person who ever minded was me." And this is the shift that no one warns you about. It is not that an older woman has lost the ability to tolerate discomfort. It is that she has finally lost the reason to. She has spent a lifetime being uncomfortable for the sake of appearances, and one ordinary day, she decides she is done paying that particular tax. At a certain age, comfort stops being laziness. Comfort becomes a form of wisdom. So if there is something in your own life that felt fine at 40 and feels wrong now, a habit, an expectation, a small daily discomfort you keep enduring out of sheer momentum, pay attention. That is not decline. That may be the sound of you, at last, beginning to listen to yourself. Seneca put it plainly, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Ruth simply stopped craving the approval and grew richer for it. There was a widow named Eleanor who, after her husband died, began wearing every beautiful thing he had ever given her, all at once, to every gathering. She thought it kept him close, but she slowly noticed people admiring the jewelry and stepping back from her. One old friend finally said gently, "Eleanor, we can't find you under all of it." She wept in the car afterward, and then, piece by piece, she put them away and found her friends and herself again. Here is what Eleanor learned, and what these women understand in their bones. Attention is not the same as respect. A compliment is not the same as love. Being noticed is not the same as being understood. The younger woman chases the first thing in each pair. The woman she becomes learns to want the second, and to build her life around the people who see her when she is tired and plain and quiet, not just when she shines. Truth number 4, and this is the deepest one, so stay with me to the end. By the time she takes off the jewelry, she has already carried more than enough. Look past the bare hands for a moment and consider the whole life behind them. By the time a woman reaches her 60s, 70s, or 80s, she has carried an astonishing amount. A marriage, or the end of one. Children raised and worried over and released into the world. Work, loss, caregiving no one ever saw, bills, grief, change after change she never asked for. And through all of it, she is still standing. So consider this gently. If a woman who has carried all of that decides she does not want to carry one more thing, not around her neck, not on her wrist, not hanging from her ears, then perhaps that is not neglect. Perhaps it is not sadness, or surrender, or letting herself go. Perhaps it is peace. Perhaps she has simply set down one more small weight, because she has already carried the heavy ones, and has earned, at long last, the right to travel light. The palliative care nurse, Bronnie Ware, spent years at the bedsides of the dying, listening to their final regrets. Not one of them, she wrote, ever wished they had worn more jewelry, or looked more polished, or performed more prettily for a world that was always watching. The deepest regret she heard, again and again, was this: "I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me." The woman with the bare hands has simply arrived at that courage a little early, And that is the thread beneath all four. She stopped proving herself because she knew who she was. She chose comfort because she'd earned the wisdom. She let go of the sparkle because she'd learned what respect actually costs. And she set down the weight because her arms were already full of a life well lived. Now, hear this clearly, because it matters. None of this is an argument against jewelry. If you love your rings, wear them with all your heart. If a necklace lifts your spirit, put it on and shine. This was never about the jewelry itself. It was only ever about the reason underneath it. Are you wearing it because it genuinely delights you, or because some old voice still whispers that without it, you might not be quite enough? That is the only question that matters. The metal on your hands means nothing. The reason in your heart means everything. A ring worn from joy is a beautiful thing. A ring worn from fear is a small daily apology to a world that never deserved one. And a woman who has stopped apologizing for taking up space, with or without the jewelry, is a woman who has finally come home to herself. Epictetus, born a slave and remembered as one of history's wisest minds, taught that some things are within our control and most things are not. What the world thinks of your bare hands, that is not yours to manage. But whether you live for their glance or for your own peace, that is entirely and always your choice. There is an old truth in the later years. A woman stops asking how to have more and begins asking what she wants to leave behind. Being comfortable comes to matter more than being admired. Being real comes to matter more than being noticed. And so genuine elegance, in the end, turns out to be something you could never clasp around your neck. It was built somewhere else entirely. It was built in the years she loved her family without applause, in the hardships she carried without complaint, in the 10,000 ordinary mornings she simply showed up and held her corner of the world together. Those years are the jewelry. Those are the only gems that ever truly caught the light. Everything else was decoration, laid on top of a life that was already, quietly, magnificent. So think of the woman who took off her rings and set them in a dish by the sink. Her circle thought she had given up. They were looking at her hands. They should have been looking at her face, which, for the first time in 50 years, had nothing left to prove and nothing left to hide. Maybe you know a woman like her. Maybe you are becoming her. Maybe you always were her, and simply hadn't been given permission to see it. If so, let this be the permission. You do not owe anyone your sparkle. You do not owe anyone a polished performance. The only thing you owe yourself now, the only debt that still matters, is peace. And peace, as Marcus Aurelius wrote 2,000 years ago, comes from letting go of everything that was never essential in the first place. The rings were never the point. The woman always was. So here is what I'll ask of you before you go. Of the four truths, the one who stopped proving, the one who chose comfort, the one who learned that attention isn't respect, and the one who had already carried enough, which one landed the deepest? Which one felt like it was written about you? Leave one word in the comments. Just one. Peace, freedom, enough, home. Whatever rose up in you as you listened. Your single word may be the exact thing another woman needs to read today, on an afternoon when she is standing at her own sink, wondering if it's all right to finally set something down. Because there is a whole quiet sisterhood of women out there who were told that taking the jewelry off meant giving up, when it always, secretly, meant growing up. And the more of us who say it out loud, the easier it becomes for the next woman to breathe. And if this reached someone you love, a mother, a sister, an old friend, or the woman looking back at you in the mirror right now, share it with her. She may need to hear today that she was never the jewelry. She was always the light underneath it. You spent a lifetime being told that more would make you enough. More sparkle, more polish, more proof. It was never true. You were enough before the first ring ever touched your hand. And you will be enough long after the last one rests in a dish by the sink. So wear it or don't. Add or take away, but do it for joy. Never again for fear. Because the most beautiful thing a woman can wear at any age is the quiet, unshakable certainty that she was always, already enough. Thank you for being here. And remember, today is the youngest you will ever be again.